Senegalese capital, Dakar.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. So, Minister, tell us, today is World Radio Day, but you are here for this regional event which seeks to see the synergy between radio as a very good and reliable medium of communication in fighting climate change. How is Gambia doing in this regard?
Well, Gambia is doing well because of two things. The majority of Gambians use the radio as a main medium of getting information. That is fact. It's backed by research. Secondly, since 2016, when President Barrow came to power, and the media landscape was open, and there was less suppression of the media, number of radio stations that now exist in Gambia is over 38 radio stations.
How many of them are community radio?
The 38 are community. We have about, I'm not sure, but we have about 10 community radios, okay, and we have about 30-something commercial radios. Now, because most Gambians, particularly those living in rural Gambia, use the radio to get information. Therefore, the radio is seen as a powerful tool to raise awareness about climate change issues in terms of adaptation, measures, in terms of resilience, in terms of impact. Now, but also remember, the Gambia, over 75% of Gambians have their livelihoods through farming, either directly or indirectly. And climate change has an impact on farming communities. And most farming communities are in rural Gambia. Now, erratic rainfall and so on, and soil degradation, all these are impacts of climate change. So therefore, if climate change more affects rural Gambians, and rural Gambians use the radio more to get information, therefore, the radio is a powerful tool to raise awareness about climate change issues, about adaptation, resilience, but also about its impacts.
Have you been able to gauge the success or the impacts of the communication pass-through under the supervision of your ministry?
We don't have the empirical evidence because we've not done any scientific evaluation. But anecdotally speaking, we know it is important because most people use radio, particularly in rural Gambia, and we've seen programs that are geared or that focus or that target climate change issues. We've seen how the Ministry of Environment have radio programs. The National Disaster Management Agency also organize awareness issues. Other civil society organizations that organize radio programs, panel discussions to raise awareness about climate change, but also help communities to come up with mitigation measures against climate change. So therefore, we can safely say that the radio is really playing a very significant role in promoting this awareness about the phenomena.
So talk about mitigation measures. You agree, Minister, that more than 80% of, if not the whole of it, the climate crisis we have today, thanks to artificially induced errors, say human activities. How prevalent are these activities in the Gambia that you are working alongside other ministries or CSOs and NGOs to correct?
Well, actually, the main culprits of climate change is not we Africans. Our carbon footprint is very low. We don't have highly industrialized manufacturing companies. Most of this is done by outside. But because climate is a global phenomenon, it is what they call, it has a local component. That is, local actions have global ramifications.
Consequences, exactly.
So when a particular country in the West or in Asia, carbon footprint is large, it doesn't affect that country alone. It also affects countries that are in Africa. So we're at the receiving end. We feel the impact. We have to find measures to mitigate and to become resilient. But we really don't emit that much carbon. If you look at air travel, which emits a lot of carbon, most Africans never use air travel. So we're at the receiving end of this whole disaster.
So, Minister, you're talking about emissions. How about looking at other contributory factors to climate change? The issue of deforestation, illegal mining, water pollution, all of that stuff that you can see exists in the Gambia, that you are using the media, radio, to help sanitize the people.
So what happens when it comes to deforestation is real. we have this problem, particularly in Gambia, but we always raise awareness, and we've had initiatives, tree planting initiatives, talking to people about how to preserve the natural environment, the ecosystem. So that is going on. But I think that this also is like a cyclical thing, in the sense that climate change induces more poverty. And when people don't have anything to do, particularly farmers, they tend to go to the forest to get firewood to sell or to sell coal. So it's kind of a vicious cycle. But by and large, what we are doing in Gambia as a government is to raise awareness and also to sensitize communities to understand that they cannot engage in activities that bring in like bushfires. They cannot be cutting down certain trees. We've put these measures and these certain policies in place to protect our environment. But nonetheless, even if we do that at our own local level, like I said, climate change has global ramifications. If Gambia is doing well, coming up with mitigation measures, but the other countries are not doing the same thing, still the impact we will have will not be very significant.
Well, this is a very good opportunity also, Honorable Minister, for you to get to tell us more about some of the policies by Gambian governments to address climate crisis in the country. And you keep mentioning that there is a climate policy being worked by the government, which seeks to, among others, make renewable energy affordable to Gambia by 2040.
So what we also do is to reduce carbon emissions in Gambia. We want to go to net zero carbon footprint. So what we are doing is that we are doing what they call a green transition. Currently, almost 100% of our energy generation is from heavy fuel generators. These have serious consequences for the climate. What we want to do is to transition from heavy fuel to green energy. That is by using solar, wind, and hydro. Recently, we are connecting to the OMVG, which is hydro from Guinea-Conakry. We've already built a 17 megawatt solar plant, which we are scaling up to 25. We are also working on building another 50 megawatts of electricity in Soma, in the lower river region of the country, which we scale to 150 megawatts. By and large, we are working with partners like the European Union and the African Development Bank to make sure that by end of 2025, we build 200 megawatts of electricity. That will ensure that almost over 50% of our energy generation is green energy. Also, we are also ordering 2 new ferries, which are green ferries. They'll be powered by solar and not by heavy fuel. These are some of the measures we are taking to ensure that we help in climate mitigation.
And you also said that over time, the government has, in partnership with CSOs and NGOs, trained more than 1,000 journalists regarding climate or environmental issues coverages. Do you hope to expand on that, given the take here today, where yourself and others have made the call for increased collaboration and knowledge-based or fact-based reporting on global issues?
It's important. We need to enhance the competence and the capacity of journalists who report on climate-related issues, because climate-related issues are very specialized issues. Not anybody can report on. You need to get the facts. Otherwise, you'll misinform the public, and this can have serious consequences.
Has there been any case of misinformation regarding environment?
Not necessarily, not yet. We don't have any particular case which of significant. But nonetheless, what we are trying to say is that we need to build the capacity of journalists who report on climate-related activities to understand the nature of climate change, the resilience issues, mitigation methods, and all this. But how to report? Because climate change has consequences for people. It destroys people's livelihoods. So when you report on that, you need to be sensitive to how you do the reporting. Otherwise, you can do more danger, more harm than good. How you pass the information. That is why we build the capacity of media houses on reporting on climate-related issues.
Minister, I'm happy you are here. Maybe this will be my last question to you. There was a report by Amnesty International, I think 2 years ago. Gambia was among 10 or 11 countries captured that they said to lose collectively billions of dollars due to illegal fishing or overfishing from their waters. Where is the government now regarding regulation and policies to prevent or reduce overfishing from the Gambian water? Because there was heavy protest also by fishermen and residents of riverine communities of the Gambia that because of these overfishing activities, their livelihoods were being threatened. Some of them lost their jobs, and that was fueling migration.
I'm not very familiar with that particular case. I'm also not very familiar with the report. I might have missed it somehow, but by and large, the government has very good policy in place to protect our territorial waters, our exclusive economic zone, but also our marine resources, because we know that we cannot engage in activity that will deplete our marine resources. We have very strong policy in place, we have a very strong licensing regime that ensure that we don't only, that is why if you look at our laws, in fact, within 9 nautical miles, these big trawlers are not supposed to fish there. It's supposed to be left to artisanal fishermen to ensure that also local fishermen are able to compete fairly with big European and Chinese trawlers in our territory. That is why the 9 nautical mile is exclusive reserve for artisanal fishermen. But even though it's difficult to police exclusive economic zone, many countries struggle to police. You need resources, you need the tools to police it. You need to empower and equip the Navy to do it. Almost countries in Africa have this challenge. But nonetheless, we are doing our best through laws and regulations and policies to ensure that we protect our marine resources, to protect our artisanal fishermen, but also to ensure that our fish stock is not depleted.
And finally, Minister, this will be a good time for you to answer this. The Gambia is not alone in this, and most African countries, even outside Africa, are affected right now by the suspension of aid from the American government through the USAID. And since we're talking environment, the Gambia is not exempted from the list of this. What arrangement is the government making in ensuring that they bridge the gap in terms of interventions, or like you said earlier, mitigation and adaptation measures that would have been funded through USAID programs?
In fact, it's good you asked this question. One of the projects by the Ministry of Environment, which is the USAID project targeting LDC countries, least developed countries, Gambia is one of them. One of the projects has been suspended. They've done the fix of suspension for now. However, we are still monitoring the situation. It is evolving very quickly. It's a 90-day grace period where the Americans want to assess all projects funded by American money, whether they align with America's foreign policy. So nothing is concrete yet. However, we know that certain sectors are affected. Civil society is affected. We are looking at alternative ways of financing and ensure these projects are sustainable. Now remember, every project has a sustainability component. I think this will be activated to see what can happen. This is a wake-up call for African countries to focus more on local resource mobilization and reduce reliance on donor-funded projects, because otherwise these are the consequences. However, the Gambia government is monitoring the situation very closely, and we are now talking, looking at alternative ways of making sure that most of these projects continue to be funded.
Will this mean tax reforms?
Well, I'm not sure yet. I cannot say much on that matter. What I can say is that we are monitoring the situation. Like I said, it did not affect us that much. The sector it has basically affected is mostly the energy sector, which is about $25 million for electricity enhancement. But again, it's not that much that's been suspended for now. When it comes to environment, I've also mentioned that when it comes to healthcare, the anti-malaria prevention campaign is also suspended. But like I said, the Gambia government has a wide range of partners that we deal with, but also the Gambia government is now focusing and coming up with innovative methods of local resource mobilization. And therefore, for the Gambia, I don't think this will have any serious impact on some of the projects and programs we have for our people.
Thank you very much, sir. Anything you want to add?
No, thank you.